So the third chapter of Kiddushin closes with this statement by Rabbi Tarfon that a mamzer can be purified. So we talk about the offspring of illicit unions, and the fourth chapter then jumps straight into this question. The fourth chapter of Kiddushin jumps straight into this question, seemingly changing the subject, but we'll see following the thread. It tells us, it goes into history. Asara Yochasin Alumi Bavel. 10 Yochasin. Safari translates this as genealogical classes. I think this is Rabbi Kulp, actually, from the conservative Yeshiva. Yochasin are people who are connected to one another. So 10 types of connections, 10 families, or this is not families, but family groups. 10. Anyway, well, let's just try and figure out from the Mishnah what we're talking about. 10 Yochasin, 10 sort of groups of connections. Alumi Bavel went up from Bavel. So Ezra is now bringing the people back from Babel to Jerusalem. They've been in diaspora. Things have got mixed up. He's going to, according to the Talmud, there's no bet din in Babel that he can use to adjudicate. So he's going to separate things out as he brings them back. So who are these 10 classes? Kohanei Leviei Yisraelei. Priests, Leviim, Yisraelim. Well, we're familiar with those. Halalim, or halalei, offspring of priests who have married people that they're not allowed to marry. So, for example, the high priest marries a widow. Classic example: high priest marries a widow, or Amalala Kohen Gadol. A high priest marries a widow. The offspring is a halal. Gerei, freed slaves. Harurei, gerei converts. Harurei, freed slaves. We're familiar with these. Mamzerei, unutzinei, shatukei, va'asufei. So mamzerei, we've already defined as the product of a forbidden union. Nitinei, who are the nitinim? We've come across these before. Generally, we think of them as non-Jews, actually. We think of the nitinim as non-Jews. And interestingly, they are mentioned in Ezra, in the book of Ezra. The Ezra brings people back from the Netinim, and they seem to be some kind of temple, if you like, temple service person, because at least in the book of Ezra, we read that Natan David v'hasarim la'avot halevim netinim 220 from the Netinim who David and the princes had appointed to serve the Levim, 220. Kulam nikvu b'shemot, all of them mentioned by name. So they would seem to be pretty high status here. If they're all mentioned by name, there's exactly 220. The Malbim points us back to the Netinim mentioned in the, of course, we mentioned King David. And so the Malbim points us back to the Netinim who are mentioned actually in the book of Joshua. The Malbim says these are the Gibeonites, as in Joshua 9:27. And there's a story there. It's a famous story, but we haven't looked at it, or we haven't looked at it recently. So it's worth going back that Joshua is conquering the land, and he's destroying everything in front of him. He's destroying the 7 nations, and the inhabitants of Gibeon don't want to be caught up. So they acted they act cunningly, and they behave like old travelers, and they take old sacks on their donkeys and wine bottles and old shoes, and they go to Joshua and they say, oh yeah, we've come from a long way away. We're not from around here. We're not one of the 7 nations. We've come a long way away. So please, let's make a brit. Let's make a brit. And eventually they're found out. The brit is made, but Joshua finds out that they acted deceitfully. Now, he won't kill them because of the brit. but he doesn't recognize them as members of the community because of the deceit. So what does he do? Vayinem Yoshua bayom hahu chotvei etzim veshovei maim la'edah. So he makes them hewers of wood and drawers of water for the congregation. And for the altar of the Lord to this day. Into the place he chooses, which is, of course, the temple. So these Nisinim, these are the descendants of the Gibeonites who avoided extermination by pretending to be they pretended to be from a long way away, and they turned out not to be. Really interesting. When Joshua finds that they've been lying, he does not kill them, but he doesn't admit them to, if you like, full Jewish status. They're hewers of wood and bearers of water. So these are the Nisinim who come up from Bavel. And then we've got the Shatukim and the Asufim. The Shatukim are translated here as foundlings. Who is a Shatuki? Well, we'll see that in the next Mishnah. And Asufi, well, we'll see that in the next Mishnah. And not everybody can marry everybody else. So the Mishnah goes on. Priests and Levites and Israelites are permitted to each other. We're kind of familiar with this halacha now. Leviye v'Yisraelei chalalei gerei v'charurei mutarin lavo ze v'ze. Levites and Israelites, so not Kohanim now. So the Kohanim are excluded. Leviim and Israelites, chalalim, descendants of Kohanim who can't be Kohanim anymore, converts and freed slaves are permitted to each other. And again, I think we're pretty familiar with this halacha. That, a convert can marry a Levi or Israel, and so can a Chalal. The Mishnah continues, Gerei v'charurei, converts and freed slaves, mamzerei u'netinei, mamzerim and netinim. Netinim are not fully Jewish. Shatukei asufei, we'll see who these are. Mutarim lavo ze v'ze, can marry each other. So in the time of the Mishnah, it looks like a mamzer could marry a convert or could marry a freed slave. I mean, whether this would have, well, we don't have freed slaves now, but really interesting. This was the halacha in time of the Mishnah. Now, who are the shatuke and who are the shutuke and the asufe? Well, the Mishnah continues, "Ve'elu hein ha-shatuke kol shu makiret imo ve'eno makiret aviv." These are the shatuke, someone who knows who his mother is, but not his father. So we talked at the end of the previous chapter of Kiddushin about the fact that for certain aspects of status, the status runs through the mother's line. And of course, we know who the mother is. Obviously, you don't always know who the father is, and that is apparently a shatuki. So who's an asufi? Asufi means to be gathered up. Asuf koshen ne'esaf min hashuk. An asufi is someone who was gathered up from the marketplace. So this looks like an abandoned baby. I mean, even today, right? There are. We were in San Francisco recently. There were fire stations where you could abandon a baby. If you couldn't take care of your baby, you could hand it into the fire station. Sounds very similar. So asuf koshen esaf min hashuk. A foundling is someone who's gathered in from the market. So he doesn't know who his father is, and he doesn't know who his mother is. And of course, in both situations, the shatuki and the asufi, if we don't know who his father is, maybe he's a mamzer, or maybe he's a dubious mamzer. We don't know. The halacha actually goes according to Abba Shaul. Let's read Abba Shaul. Abba Shaul haya korela shatuki baduki. Abba Shaul used to call the shatuki a baduki, a checked one. Now we did learn in the beginning of the Mishnah of Ketubot, right at the end of the first chapter, that if a woman is pregnant and not married, but she says, "Oh yeah, I'm pregnant by such and such a person, and the child is kasher, the child is fine." In that situation, we do believe her. So we trust the mother as to the genealogy of her child, even if she doesn't bring evidence. And Abba Shaul seems to be saying, "Oh yeah, we can take evidence that the shatuki is not a mamzer from the mother of the child."